In the scorched dust of West Texas, 1875, a Mexican woman stood accused, a noose waiting just beyond sunrise. Her crime? Saying no to a powerful white rancher. With the town against her and the truth buried beneath branded lies, her only chance came from the shadows. A lone Comanche warrior with no tribe, no allegiance, and nothing left to lose. As law twisted into vengeance and survival turned to war, two outcasts, one hunted for her blood, the other for his name, would forge an alliance neither the frontier nor its demons saw coming. What would you risk to expose the truth when justice rides with a bow and silence cuts deeper than bullets? The sun burned like judgment over the dusty town of Blackthorn, Texas. 1875. The kind of heat that made tempers short and justice quicker than it ought to be. They dragged her by the wrists, dirt clinging to the hem of her skirt and shame biting into every whispered slur. Isabella Reyes didn't speak, didn't struggle, not because she was guilty, but because in this town, a woman like her didn't get to explain. Her hands were tied, but her back was straight. In front of the church, the townsfolk gathered like crows, curious, cruel, pretending to be just. Sheriff Abbott leaned against the hitching post, chewing tobacco and not meeting her eyes. He wouldn't look at her, not since the Blackthorn boy made his accusation. "She stole from me," Colton Blackthorn had said, voice smooth as oil and twice as slick. "Tried to sneak out of my barn with a satchel full of silver." It wasn't true. God knew it, and Colton knew it, but his word carried more weight than hers. Always had, always would, especially with a name like Blackthorn and a ranch that stretched beyond what the eye could see. The noose hung from the live oak in the square, an old twisted tree that had seen more death than mercy. Isabella glanced at it once, then looked up at the sky. If this was the end, she'd face it like her mother had, with dignity, with fire. Sheriff Abbott cleared his throat, trying to make his voice louder than his conscience. "We hold this trial by public vote." "Trial?" someone scoffed. "You already got the rope ready." The crowd laughed, but unease rippled beneath it. A few of the women wouldn't meet Isabella's eyes. One old man spat in the dirt and muttered something about "damn Mexicans." No one corrected him. Colton stood with arms crossed, hat tipped back, a smirk playing on his lips like he was already carving a notch in his belt. "I never touched a thing that wasn't mine," Isabella said loud and clear. A hush fell. "Don't lie now, girl," Colton replied, voice low and laced with threat. "You got caught red-handed." "I got caught near your barn, that's all. And you were supposed to be cleaning the stables, not sneaking around the main house," he added. She could have told them the truth, that Colton had backed her into a corner the night before, reeking of whiskey and entitlement, whispering things no decent man should say, that when she kneed him and ran, he'd sworn she'd regret it. But no one wanted to hear that version. The sheriff was about to motion for the rope when it happened. A single sharp whistle cut through the still air. Then came the pounding of hooves, and from the scrubland, like something summoned from legend, he appeared. A rider on a painted horse, tall, broad-shouldered, bare-chested, but for the beadwork and feathers crossing his chest. His skin was dark with sun and bloodline, his eyes even darker, like twin knives forged in silence. He said nothing as he dismounted, his steps unhurried. The crowd parted without realizing they had. Someone whispered the word, "Comanche." Isabella didn't dare blink. The man walked straight toward her, not the sheriff, not the boy, not the crowd. Her. When he reached her side, he turned slowly, deliberately, and fixed his gaze on Colton. "No blood today," he said in perfect English. "Not for your lie." Colton sneered. "You threatening me, Injun? I offer you a chance to walk away. That is not a threat. It is mercy." The sheriff stepped forward, hand hovering over his pistol. "You got no business here, Chief." "I have business where there is injustice," the warrior said, "and a woman tied to a tree for a crime she did not commit. That is injustice." A hush deeper than silence fell. Colton chuckled and reached for his belt. "Then maybe it's time somebody taught you who runs this." He didn't finish the sentence, because in a blink the Comanche moved, faster than any man in Blackthorn had ever seen. A blade sang through the air, no blood drawn, but the rope was cut. Isabella stumbled forward, free. The warrior caught her, one strong arm steadying her before she hit the ground. "Get on," he said, voice low. "What?" she breathed. He nodded to the horse. "Now!" The crowd wasn't frozen anymore. "Stop them!" the sheriff roared. But it was too late. Isabella threw herself onto the horse's back, the warrior mounting behind her. He snapped the reins and they were gone like smoke through a bullet hole, vanishing into the canyon's edge, leaving nothing behind but dust and a silence that tasted like fear. Back in town, Colton stood stunned, rage growing like wildfire behind his eyes. "She'll be back," he spat. "No half-breed savage gets away with stealing what's mine." But the truth was this: Isabella Reyes had never belonged to him, and now for the first time, she wasn't alone. The horse carried them deep into the canyon lands where scrub brush gave way to shadows and the wind whispered secrets in forgotten tongues. Isabella clung to the saddle horn with blistered palms, her chest still heaving from the gallop, her mind struggling to catch up with her body. She'd thought she was going to die back there. Now she wasn't sure what this was. The Comanche hadn't spoken since they'd escaped. He rode like a man carved from stone, silent, focused, unbothered by the world burning behind them. After miles of silence, he finally pulled the horse to a slow trot beneath the cover of a cliff overhang. The land here smelled of sage and dust, and the light filtered in gold through the rock above. "Dismount," he said. Isabella slid off, legs trembling as her boots hit the earth. Her wrists ached where the rope had bitten in, red welts blooming across her skin. The man dropped down beside her, landing with the grace of someone who'd never known chains or fences. He pulled a water skin from his saddle and handed it over. She stared at it for a moment, then took a sip, cool and clean. The taste hit her harder than any whiskey ever could. "Who are you?" she asked finally, her voice hoarse. The man didn't answer right away. He pulled a strip of leather from his pouch and began wrapping it around the neck of his horse, soothing the animal. "They call me Red Elk," he said at last. "That's your real name?" He glanced at her. "It's the one that matters now." She nodded slowly, watching him move. He wasn't young, but not old either. Late 30s, maybe. Scars marked his arms like tattoos made by war and survival. "Why did you help me?" she asked. Red Elk didn't look at her. "Because no one else was going to." She waited, but that was all he said. "I didn't steal anything," she added, her voice rising just a touch. "I didn't do what they said." "I know. You don't even know me." He finally looked at her then, dark eyes meeting hers. "I don't have to know you to see truth. I've seen enough lies dressed in lawmen's coats to last a lifetime." Isabella turned away, swallowing hard. The weight of what just happened was settling into her chest like cold lead. She'd been inches from a rope, seconds from death. "Where are we?" she asked. "Old hunting ground," he said. "White men call it Bitter Canyon. My people called it Wakasatu. It means place where smoke sleeps." "Are we safe here?" He hesitated, then nodded. "For now." They sat in silence as the sun dipped low. Coyotes cried in the distance. The shadows stretched out like claws across the canyon walls. She watched him build a small fire with the precision of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. Stones, dry brush, flint. "You're not with a tribe anymore?" she asked. He shook his head. "Not since the army burned our winter camp near Palo Duro. Some went to the reservation. I didn't." "So you live alone?" "I live free." There was no boast in the words, just fact. She looked into the fire. "They'll come for me, you know." "I know," he said. "And you?" "They'll come for me too. That's what cowards do. Chase truth with guns." She studied him for a long moment. "Then why help me? Why risk it?" His jaw tightened. "Because there are too few people left who deserve saving. And when I saw you in that square, head high, eyes steady, I knew you were one of them." Isabella blinked. No one had ever said something like that to her. Not in this life. "You could have ridden off," she whispered. "I could have," he said, "but I didn't." She wrapped her arms around herself. The fire's warmth wasn't enough to push out the cold in her bones. "Thank you," she said quietly. Red Elk didn't answer. He just reached into his satchel and pulled out a strip of dried meat, handing it to her. "Rest while you can," he said. "They'll ride at first light, and when they do, we'll be long gone." As the flames flickered and the wind curled through Bitter Canyon like breath through a ghost town, Isabella Reyes closed her eyes beside a man who owed her nothing, yet might be the only reason she still breathed. By the time the sun rose, they were already moving. Red Elk led the way on foot now, guiding the horse along a narrow ravine that twisted through the canyon like an old scar. Isabella followed, saddlebags slung across her shoulder, the silence between them as steady as their footsteps. They hadn't spoken much since breaking camp. He moved with the quiet precision of someone who had learned to survive without being seen. She moved with the unshakable resolve of someone who refused to be erased. Eventually, the trail widened into a dry wash, and Red Elk slowed. "This is far enough for today," he said, voice low. Isabella dropped the bag and rubbed her wrists. The wire marks were scabbing now, angry and red. "You think they're close?" "They'll be closer by nightfall." She sat on a rock, eyes scanning the landscape. "You always live like this? Running from people who want you dead?" Red Elk crouched near a patch of brush and began to make a small fire pit. "I don't run, I move." She watched him work for a long time. "You're not like any man I've met." He paused, then glanced at her. "That a compliment?" "I'm still deciding." A flicker of something, amusement, maybe, touched his face. Then it was gone. As the fire crackled to life, Red Elk reached into his satchel and pulled out a bundle wrapped in buckskin. He laid it gently in the dirt, then unfolded it. Inside were objects worn by time and memory: a carved bone knife, a beaded strip of leather, a small, frayed photograph. Isabella leaned forward. "That your family?" He nodded once. The photo was faded, but she could make out a man and a woman standing stiffly in front of a canvas tent, a boy between them. The boy looked about 10. He had Red Elk's eyes. "My father was a chief," he said softly, "until the army made him a prisoner." "What happened?" "They said he signed a treaty, promised we'd be left alone." Red Elk's voice was flat. "But treaties with the white men are like snow in the spring. They melt when the heat comes." She said nothing. There wasn't anything to say. He picked up the beaded strip and rolled it between his fingers. "I was 12 when they burned our camp, took my mother, shot my brother trying to run." Her chest tightened. "I'm sorry." He shrugged like sorrow didn't belong to him anymore. "What about you?" he asked. She blinked. "What about me?" "You fight like someone who's been hurt. Who taught you?" "My uncle, after my father died." She stared into the fire. "My mother married an American. He drank, hit her. When I was 10, I hit him back. And he left, never came back." Red Elk nodded slowly, as if understanding more than she'd said. They sat in silence again, the fire snapping between them. Then Isabella spoke. "Colton Blackthorne. He didn't just accuse me to cover theft. He wanted to teach me a lesson for turning him down. That's what this is really about." Red Elk's gaze sharpened. "You're sure?" "He's a man who hates being told no by anyone who isn't white and obedient." Red Elk stirred the fire with a stick. "That kind of man doesn't stop, not unless someone makes him." "That's what I'm afraid of," she said. "That when he catches me again, no one will be there to cut me free." Red Elk looked at her then. Really looked. "He won't get the chance." A beat passed. "Why are you helping me?" she asked again, more softly this time. He took a long breath. "Because I've seen too many good people fall alone. Too many women left behind while the men with guns made the rules. And maybe," he paused, "maybe I was waiting for a reason to fight again." Their eyes locked, and for a moment the canyon felt smaller, like they weren't so different after all. Suddenly Red Elk stood, his body tensed. "What is it?" she asked. "Smoke," he said, scanning the ridgeline. "Fresh, campfire, north slope." She rose beside him. "Think it's them?" "I think it's time we find out." He grabbed his bow. She grabbed the saddlebag. The wind picked up as they moved, dust and heat and fate pressing against their backs. Because somewhere out there, the past was catching up, and this time neither of them intended to run. The sun had nearly disappeared behind the bluffs when Red Elk signaled for her to drop to the ground. They'd been moving through low brush for hours, following the curl of smoke that drifted above the northern ridge like a warning. Now, just below them in a shallow basin, the source revealed itself. 3 men sat around a campfire, their horses tied off beneath a lone cottonwood. Branding irons glowed red in the embers. Red Elk's jaw tightened. That's Blackthorn's mark. Isabella lay beside him, eyes narrowing on the iron. They're changing brands, making it look like stolen cattle came from someone else. He nodded. Exactly what I feared. This isn't just theft. It's war, one hidden behind fake brands and burned fences. Why? She whispered. For land, for power, and to frame my people. They watched as one man pulled a hide-wrapped bundle from a saddlebag and tossed it to the ground. The flap fell open. Isabella inhaled sharply. That's Dr. Abernathy's seal, the stolen medicine wagon, the one meant for a sick child, for a family waiting on hope. She clenched her fists. This is what they took. While the town blames Comanche raids, these bastards are playing both sides. Red Elk studied the scene, counting weapons, calculating angles. We can't fight them here, he said. Not 3 against 2, not in open space. We have to do something. He turned to her. We will. Back at their makeshift camp, they worked quickly. Red Elk pulled out a faded map drawn by his uncle years before. It showed an old stone cabin built into the canyon wall, a place once used for winter hunting. They won't be expecting us there, he said, and it's close enough to intercept them if we lead them. You want to bait them? I want them to follow us, he corrected, and I want them to think they're winning. Isabella leaned over the map, eyes scanning. We get them to chase us, lure them into the rocks, and then what? Then we turn the truth into fire. That night they didn't sleep. They prepared instead, gathered dry branches, coated old leather with bear fat, filled canteens and sharpened weapons. Red Elk taught her how to wrap a torch for long burn. She taught him how to pack a saddlebag, tight enough not to rattle when galloping over shale. They worked in rhythm, and somewhere between darkness and strategy, their walls slipped. She told him about her mother's stories, tales of spirits in the mesquite trees, of songs sung to the desert wind. He listened in silence but nodded at all the right parts. He told her about a brother who died with a flute in his hands because he refused to carry a rifle. They didn't say the word loss. It hung in the air between them, unspoken and mutual. Just before dawn, they lit the decoy fire. Smoke rose fast, catching the attention of the riders below. As expected, the men mounted up and followed. Red Elk and Isabella moved fast through the rocky terrain, leading them in a wide arc toward the stone cabin. By midday, the trap was set. From behind a stone shelf above the narrow canyon mouth, Red Elk whispered, "When I give the signal, light the torches." Isabella nodded, heart pounding. The riders came hard and loud, guns drawn, voices cocky, expecting a single wounded girl and a lone savage. What they got was fire. Torches dropped from above, smoke erupting in waves. Horses panicked. One man fell. Another shouted blindly through the haze. Red Elk loosed 2 arrows. Both found their mark. Isabella, crouched behind the fire line, caught sight of the leader, the same man who'd accused her, Colton Blackthorn. His face twisted in shock as he realized this wasn't a rescue. It was judgment. She stood tall above the smoke, revolver steady. "You remember me now?" she called. His eyes widened. "You should have stayed hanged." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Red Elk appeared beside her, his bow raised, steady and silent. Colton turned his horse and fled, the last of his men scattering behind him. The canyon grew quiet, smoke curling like ghosts into the sky. Isabella exhaled slowly, adrenaline still burning in her limbs. Red Elk stepped beside her. "This was just a warning," he said. She nodded. "Then let's make sure they know we're not done." And together they began to plan the next move, not for survival, but for truth. Colton Blackthorn didn't sleep that night. His men were dead or scattered, his branding irons abandoned, and the girl, the one he thought he could break, had looked him in the eye and held a gun like she was born to it. Worse than that, she had someone with her, a Comanche ghost with a bow that never missed. He rode hard through the night, teeth clenched, rage boiling in his chest. By morning, he arrived back at his father's ranch house, his horse foaming and bleeding at the flank. He stormed through the front doors and slammed his fists against the dining table, knocking over a bottle of whiskey. She's alive, he growled, and she's got help. James Blackthorne looked up slowly, his age-weathered face calm behind a wall of indifference. So fix it? I had her in my hands, Colton snapped. Then some savage showed up and turned my men into kindling. James rose. You're my son, Colton, not a boy crying over spilled milk. You want to run this ranch one day? Handle your problems. Colton's eyes burned. I will. I want every hired gun from here to El Paso. I want her brought in alive. Alive? He hesitated. For now. James raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Colton turned and barked orders to the ranch hands. By dusk, 7 armed men rode out under the Blackthorne brand. Meanwhile, in a canyon 2 days' ride north, Red Elk crouched beside a shallow spring, washing blood from his shoulder. Isabella knelt across from him, unrolling a crude map she'd found among the supplies they stole back from the raiders. Look, she said, Blackthorne's shipments, marked in red, trails, timings, everything. He's not just stealing cattle, he's moving supplies, medicine, weapons. For what? Red Elk asked, voice tight with pain. She met his eyes. I think he's preparing for something bigger, maybe a land grab when the railroad comes through. Red Elk stared into the distance. That would explain the urgency, the lies, blaming us. They sat in silence, the only sounds the buzz of flies and the steady drip of water over stone. Then Isabella said, We need to get this to someone who'll listen. Who? My uncle, she said. He's a lawyer in San Angelo. That's 5 days south. I know. Red Elk stood slowly, testing his shoulder. Then we ride at dawn. But they didn't make it to dawn. The first shot came as a whisper in the dark. Then a bullet struck the rock above Isabella's head. Ambush! Red Elk hissed, pulling her down. They scrambled for cover as gunfire echoed through the canyon. Muzzle flashes lit up the ridgeline. Colton's voice rang out, cruel and sure. You can't hide forever, sweetheart. Red Elk fired blind toward the sound, forcing silence for a moment. We have to move, he said. There's a ravine west of here, steep but narrow. They won't be able to follow on horseback. They ran under cover of darkness, the stolen map and medicine strapped to Isabella's back. Rocks gave way beneath their boots. Red Elk staggered once, clutching his shoulder, but she caught him. You saved me once, she said. Now it's my turn. They slid into the ravine just as another barrage of shots ripped through the air. Behind them, Colton cursed and called for torches. They won't stop, Red Elk said, breathing hard. Not until one of us is dead. Isabella looked at him. Then let's make sure it's him. The ravine spilled them out into a basin of dry scrub and stone as the first light of morning bled across the horizon. Isabella helped Red Elk to his feet. His shirt was dark with blood, his breathing shallow but steady. We keep moving, he rasped. No, she said. You rest. I'll go. His eyes met hers. They'll kill you. Not if I beat them to San Angelo first. She pulled the satchel tight against her shoulder. Inside, proof of theft, corruption, and conspiracy. Enough to take down the Blackthorne name. Enough to start a war. Maybe end one too. Red Elk gripped her wrist. Take this. He removed the beaded band from his arm, the one with the Red Elk stitched into the leather. If they don't believe your words, show them that. She nodded, throat thick. I'll come back for you. He didn't reply, but his grip lingered longer than needed. By mid-morning, she was riding south on a borrowed horse, alone, pursued and unafraid. Back in the canyon, Red Elk waited, his bow across his lap, a knife in his boot, and the resolve of a warrior who had run out of places to run. Colton found him just before noon. The posse rode in hard, surrounding the camp. Colton dismounted slow, smug, rifle slung lazily over one shoulder. Thought you could hide? He called. Red Elk stood, legs shaking but spine straight. Not hiding, waiting. For what? Colton sneered. For the kind of justice men like you don't believe in. Colton raised his rifle. But before he could fire, the sound of hoofbeats thundered from the south. Dozens of them. Isabella riding at the front, flanked by riders in uniform. Texas Rangers, summoned by her uncle. Behind them, Judge Alcott, known across the territory for doing what most others wouldn't. Listening. Colton turned, frozen in disbelief. Isabella dismounted and marched forward, her voice like a whip. I have statements, documents, and eyewitness testimony. You framed innocent people, stole government supplies, and tried to murder a federal witness. Judge Alcott dismounted. Is it true, Mr. Blackthorne? Colton went for his gun. Too slow. A ranger's rifle cracked, and Colton hit the dirt, screaming and clutching his arm. They didn't kill him. Justice would. 3 weeks later, Red Elk stood before the territorial judge in a borrowed coat and war paint faded by time. The charges against his people had been dropped. The reservation boundaries were redrawn. He was offered a role he never asked for. Liaison, a bridge between two worlds. He didn't answer right away. Later, beneath the shade of a mesquite tree, he looked to Isabella. You think peace is possible? He asked. She smiled, tired but proud. I think we just proved it's worth trying for. Red Elk nodded, gazing out at the land that had taken so much and finally given something back. If they come again, she said, for me, for your people. He looked at her, the edges of a smile pulling his lips. Then we ride together. And somewhere on the horizon, where the earth meets the sky, the fire didn't burn to destroy. It burned to cleanse, to begin again. And so, across these unforgiving lands, another tale drifts away with the wind.
I hope you enjoyed this thrilling journey. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this story? Let me know in the comments below. Your feedback inspires more epic tales.